this year will be the 10th anniversary of the Women's Climbing Symposium, which originated and kind of was first conceived at the Climbing Hangar in Liverpool. And yeah, Ged and I, it was born out of a discussion between Ged and myself, and yeah, we're going to go kind of back to the roots and discuss its origin, where it kind of came from and how it's developed and changed along the way. Okay, so let's talk about where it all began, because I think we have different ideas about whose idea the Women's Climbing Symposium was.
Do you?
Ged likes to take credit.
Whoa. Credit where credit's due. It came out of, I'd say, multiple brains, really.
Yeah.
So, when I think back, there's two things that stick in my mind. So, the first one is that you were the first person I approached to work at the hangar. So you were like employee number one, if we don't include me. And I remember thinking, well, she's really good at this climbing business. Why isn't there more women climbing? Like, I mean, it just seemed so obvious. Like, it was kind of like, that doesn't make any sense. And also, my wife, or now wife, is a feminist academic, and she was like, the whole world of climbing is not really set up for women to participate on their own terms. They have to be like men. And I was like, okay, cool. So what do we do about that?
How do we change it?
Yeah, what do we do? Yeah. In all honesty, though, the first genuinely 100% female input into the climbing hangar was your sisters, who, when I was trying to badge you into working for me, they were like, see, if you build a climbing wall, you best make the toilets nice, because the toilets and climbing walls are always rubbish.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh, and then we just like toilets.
Toilet's nice, good cafe, and warm. And you were like, okay, I've got it, build a good climbing wall.
And there was like, again, at that point in time, I was so completely focused on climbing. I hadn't even thought of toilets. Like, I mean, yeah, you need one.
But when I started at the hangar, obviously I was very much involved with the build and literally like cleaning the building out and painting the walls. That's how early that started. But then I remember you being kind of very adamant that we wanted to set up a women's coaching session, which I guess was kind of new at that point. Not many people were doing that. And yeah, there was, I think initially I felt a bit weird about it. I was like, why is this necessary? Do people need it? Do people want it? But it filled up really quickly. The women were so psyched, and there was just this huge buzz around it. But at the same time, I started to get asked questions repeatedly about different things, about climbing on your period, and if I climbed when I was on my period, and if I felt like that was okay, and like, where did I go to buy tops because my shoulders were big, and was I comfortable with like burning my boyfriend off because like they were worried about things like this, and it was all these things that I just never ever considered before. And we had so many conversations around kind of barriers that women face within the sport that I spent my first part of my climbing life oblivious and ignorant to. And then I remember very distinctly you being like, right, what can we do about that? How can we give a platform for discussions and topics to kind of see if we can start to overcome those barriers? And then Women's Climbing Symposium.
Do you remember building the questionnaire for the start of the women's coaching, the self-assessment? I remember there was one question in there. I said, Shauna, you're going to have to ask people what their strengths and weaknesses are, and I bet you 20 quid that everyone's got a list of weaknesses but no strengths. And you were like, well, that's dumb. And then I said to you, what are your strengths? And you said, I don't have any. And I was like,
I'm pretty sure you said what your weaknesses, and I said I don't have.
So, but yeah, I mean, it was interesting because what you see then, what we had access to at that point in time was this different way of seeing and describing, and then we just needed to put that kind of like in the middle, I guess, in some way.
Yeah, and just give a safe space for discussion of topics. And the Women's Climbing Symposium from the very beginning, or at the very beginning, was about barriers and overcoming them, and kind of like, let's talk about all of these barriers that we face. Let's talk about nutrition, gender differences, periods, whatever it is people needed to talk about, like having babies and coming back to climbing. You know, it was all there, and a space where we could discuss it freely and comfortably. But I think what actually happened at the event was there was so much connection going on between the women there, and there was this buzz that I've never experienced in a climbing wall. And I thought, especially with the first one, I was like, right, okay, I think we had 60 tickets, and it was like, are we going to sell any tickets? Are people going to want this? And we sold out, and it was like, okay, this is obviously desired. And they all came in, and I was a bit like, is this going to feel weird? Is it going to feel normal? And it felt amazing to have all those women in that space, and it was way more about the fact that we all loved climbing and not about the fact that we had barriers in the sport. So it really was about the love of the sport, but with kind of this sideline of let's chat about it and see how we could kind of help people to enjoy it more and kind of get more from what they already do. But it was kind of that side of it. I just didn't expect that like celebration and love of the sport.
Did you ever? What you're describing there, I guess, what that makes me think is, I remember all of those discussions, mainly in Bowl Street Coffee. So they're just there getting away from the wall, having a cup of coffee and going and discussing what we're going to do. And obviously we were so determined to make, like you said, like a celebration of like, how cool is this? But then obviously the internet's not necessarily the most positive place, and the amount of abuse I got online. People just saying this is totally unnecessary. Next is like, I remember one comment like, next is going to be a Muslims climbing symposium and stuff like this. And and the amount of things that were directed, and you were like, why? I never understood, why is this a threat? Why is a group of women getting together to discuss coaching, health, performance, climbing, and meet one another and chat? Why is that a threat?
I mean, I can't explain because I don't understand it all, and I think one of the most frustrating things for me was that so many like men were saying, well, you're not running a men's climbing symposium, and I was like, neither are you. Like, you can go do that.
Do your own.
Why have I got to do that for you? Like, I am not stopping anyone from running a men's event, and maybe at some point in the future it'll be a case of like there's co-ed events and there's men's symposium and women's symposium, but like what I know and I've seen now is that this is necessary, it's relevant, and people want it. So why shouldn't we? And why? It's always felt like we couldn't at a point. And everything we did, it was met with so much criticism. Whereas now, the Women's Climbing Symposium is a staple event in the climbing calendar. Everyone knows about it. And I think kind of the haters have definitely lessened in a way, but of course that's still there, like the internet allows people. It's the internet, full stop.
The internet.
I think one of the other interesting things along the way has been a lot of women who've been very against the Women's Climbing Symposium and being in all-female spaces. And one of the things that I remember you were very adamant about was kind of not necessarily like confronting them, but challenging those women and inviting them into the space and asking them to write reviews on the events and them being very much involved, not necessarily forcing, but if they were willing to be part of it, then kind of just to get their side and their opinion. And I think every woman we invited was actually transformed almost, and like the idea of the event. Because I think, it can sound maybe intimidating or maybe a strange thing to have so many women in one space, but it never feels that way.
No. Well, it is interesting. I think I remember the kind of criticisms that I was getting, sometimes on face-to-face as well. People were determined that the symposium was going to be an event that it wasn't. They were like, this is a women's self-help group. The last thing that women need is another self-help group. And I was like, have you looked at the program? So there was like the best 10 women climbers in the country talking about performance. There was nutrition, advice and training, all this kind of stuff. And it was like, it was a sick program. Anyone was interested in climbing, it was like this was going to be a cool day. No self-help element, nothing on about overcoming fear or whatever. It was just kind of like, it was genuine, it was positive, and it was celebratory. And so bringing those people in was necessary because you have, in my personal views in the world, you have to hear the other side. If you don't hear the other side, what you don't have is a vehicle for change. You've only got a vehicle for keeping things exactly the same.
You don't have perspective.
Exactly. So bringing those people in who are then going back out and going, you know what, actually, it's not even anything like what I thought it was pretty cool. Like, that will always be more powerful than people like us who were like, yeah, man, it's amazing, because we thought it was cool in the first place.
I do think as well, one of the things that is difficult is to articulate why it's important, because every symposium from day one, we've been really conscious to send out a questionnaire, get feedback, ask the participants, like be very involved with what's happening on the day, and to deliver something that people want, not what the organisers want or what we think is necessary. And every year we ask the question, is a women's climbing event necessary? Is it important to you? Do you want one again next year? Like, what do you think? And the list of different reasons why is endless. Some people feel really confident in that space. Some people find it really informative. Some people are there for the connect element, the development, the inspiration, or all three, or combinations. People have made lifelong friends at these events, and they come every year with their buddies. People have flown in from all over the world for these events, and literally every single year there's new reasons why it's important. So it's hard for me to sit here and say, this event is necessary, it's important, and here's why. Because I kind of need like 500 women behind me giving their reasons why, because that's who it's for. It's not for me, but I get so much out of it as well. And I'm so inspired by the people I meet on the day, the stories I hear, seeing someone achieve something they didn't think they could do. And I think as well that's why the connect, develop, inspire like goal for the symposium has developed over the years, and it's really transformed from being a platform and a space to discuss barriers into a huge celebration of the sport where like we're all women, we're all climbers, and you can kind of make your pathway through the day and choose the topics that you do.
So to pick up on something you've just said there, which is I suppose about learning, because I guess when we first started working together, you were 17.
Yeah,
and you were
a while ago.
an exceptionally talented teenage climber, and you didn't see the point of, I guess, a lot of this stuff. And I guess you were saying you were
like
oblivious to a lot of things. Yeah, totally. So what's changed? What have you learned? Like, if it's like, is there one like key thing or one key story where you've went, oh my goodness, like, and it's changed your perspective forever?
There are so many moments that have transformed me as a person, not just as a climber, that I've got from my life and from the symposium in particular. And I think that that's the key thing I've learned, is that everybody's experience is valuable, and it's so important to stop and listen to people and to hear them. And yeah, I think with me running events like the symposium, that's kind of, I'm not there running it for me. I'm not there to be like, look at what I'm doing. It's like, okay, what do people want? What can I deliver? How can we help? How can we make a difference to people? When you walk around that event and you see people beaming with smiles, and I did a poster signing at our last event and spent like a good while chatting to each individual person that came up, because I wanted to know why they were there, what they were doing there, like what their day was like. And I mean, my cheeks were so sore at the end of the day. Yeah, I had to go to an event afterwards, and I couldn't smile anymore. I was like so painful. My cheeks were so painful. But it's just so magical, and I think respecting people and their experiences is probably the biggest and most important thing I've learned throughout running the event and being part of climbing, because there's so many people in this sport, and it's such a magical sport in the sense that you can come in here today in the hangar and like I could climb on the exact same wall as a beginner that's never climbed before, because the space allows for that, the sport allows for that. We might be on different climbs, but we're in the same space and we're connected, and that's kind of magical, I think, and it's one of the things I love most about this sport.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
that's a long-winded answer.
That's a long answer. Let me ask you one more question then. In 10 years' time, so when we're having this same interview about the 20th anniversary of the Women's Climbing Symposium, what do you think we'll be talking about?
I mean, that's a hard question in like COVID times when
COVID notwithstanding, I guess. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine where climbing is going to be in 10 years time, let alone the Women's Symposium. But I think it's such a strong event, and it means so much to so many people. Like, I hope it's still going strong, and if it change, or it should change and it should develop, not if it does, because it's an event for like the people that are coming, and we need to hear them out and see what they want. So yeah, I can't answer that question. Ask all the people that are going to come to future symposiums.
Okay,
they're the ones who'll develop it.
Well, you best get that on the survey for this year, then,
But before that, what about you? Like you've seen the symposium change, you've had your all the climbing walls, like diversity and inclusion is a big part of the hangar's ethos and like their message. Like, what have you learned during that journey?
I think the single most important thing I've learned is to get out of the way. So, yeah, I started the business, and at the beginning of that, you feel like you're the front person, and it's all about you in some way because I guess it's your baby, and you're doing all of the stuff. And then the more I get out of the way, and the more I give the more I give other people the chance to hold the pen, tell the story, say, this is what climbing's about to me. This is why it's important to me, and we do that. The better it gets. Like, I learn more. People feel that they have a space that they can genuinely own a piece of. Like, just because I started the business doesn't mean I know best. It doesn't mean that I'm current.
It's good to know you've learned that. I mean, back in the day, it was so
it was obvious right at the beginning,
so
right?
hard working with you. It's taken Ged a while to get here, so I appreciate this moment.
I'm a slow learner. But that's it. Get out of the way. I've just learned. Get out of the way. I've got an opportunity to give other people a platform that's massively important to them. There's kids that climb here with their dads, their mums, people that have met here that got married and stuff, and you just kind of like, that's cool. Like, my time has been, it feels like at that front bit, which was awesome, and now it's like other people.
Keep building more climbing walls.
Build more climbing walls.
So more people can have these amazing moments in communities.
Exactly. There you go. That's a plan. I'll get busy building. You guys get busy telling the story. Yeah. Rock it out.
Got a plan.
Got a plan.
It's a wrap.